Welcome to this week's Marketing Monday. Today we're answering a question. Actually, we've had several questions along the same line, so we're kind of combining a couple of questions into one. And that is, what do you think of these free or cheap website builders like Weebly and Wix? And there's several of them. 123 My Website. I know GoDaddy has a website builder. There's lots of them out there. And people often ask us, what do you think of these things? Do they actually work? Why would I spend thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands on a website when, there's other services and things like that seem to do it really, really cheap or even free? And that's a good question. I think this reminds me of a story when I was, when I was a single mom, before I met John, I took care of my own car, and I did not like paying for things that I didn't understand. I totally get that. I don't mind paying for a part or paying for labor or, other kinds of things if I know what they're doing and why. I think that makes a lot of sense. But, on the other hand, if it's something like, the computer says that you should do this, and it's jargon, it's things that I don't necessarily understand, really smart business people and even Warren Buffett will tell you, you don't want to spend money on something that you don't understand. It's really important to invest only in things that you understand really well. That makes perfect sense. And in our consulting business, we run across a lot of people who have spent a lot of money on websites and they are still not happy. We had one lady who had spent $250,000 on a website that got zero traffic. It had been more than a year since she'd had this done, and she had no sales that she could attribute, nobody that came to her through the website that she could attribute a sale to. So that's incredibly frustrating, and I totally get that. It's kind of like, if you spend millions and millions of dollars on a paint job on an airplane that isn't even airworthy, if it's got something wrong with it that, you should have spent the money on the engines, or you should have spent the money on the avionics or the instruments or something like that. It really doesn't make that much sense to be spending money on the interior or spending money on the paint job when the plane won't even fly. Same thing with websites. The real question is, it's really not about the tools you use or how much you spend. It's about whether or not the website does its job, right? Okay. What is its job? There are really three things that your website needs to do. Thing number one is get found. Thing number two is connect with the right people on the right level. And thing number three is you want to make them do something, move along in your sales process, take the next step closer to buying your product or service. So let's talk about number one, getting found, right? This is a Yellow Pages. We actually got this from our crazy neighbor, Bob. Just kidding. We love Bob. He's a great neighbor. And the reason that we had to get this from Bob is because we don't have one in our house. We have not had one in our house for a number of years. When we want to look up a business or when we want to see who can do something for us, we use the web. And most people do. Some 75% of people, even in business to business, will look things up on the web. And so what the web is it replaces this old Yellow Pages. But what did people do with the Yellow Pages? They looked up different categories of things that they wanted. As an example, if you look up office cleaning services in this Yellow Pages, you can see that there are several of them by name, but they're listed by category, right? So you want to make sure that you're listed in the right category in the Yellow Pages. It's the same thing with search engine optimization, or the same thing with your website. If you're not listed in the right category, if people look up office cleaning services and they don't find your company, or if they look up FBOs in Salt Lake City, or if they look up, aircraft logbook software, or if they look up, whatever it is that you do, you need to be listed in the right category. Now, the neat thing is, with search engine optimization, you could be listed in 5 different categories, right? There's no reason you can't be in more than one place. And what you can do is you can optimize even different pages on your website so that when someone is looking for, as an example, our client Special Services Corporation, they are a aircraft management company. They're also an aircraft maintenance company. They are also a charter service. There are lots of different things. So they could be listed in 3 different categories in the Yellow Pages, the modern version of the Yellow Pages, which is basically search engine optimization, right? Okay, so that's thing number 1, is you want to get found. Thing number 2 is you want to connect with the right people on the right level, right? Your business is not for everybody. Your customers are not anybody that happens along. Some aviation businesses cater to DOMs, and so they're going to speak a certain language. They're going to use a certain type of images. They're going to use things that are going to really connect with and resonate with DOMs and make it sound like you're in the right place. If you're a DOM, we talk your language. We know what you go through every day. We know what problems you have and those kinds of things. We know these are the kinds of things that we can do for you. Most people only spend a few seconds on a website before they decide this is somebody that can help me and this is somebody that understands me or not. And so they'll jump out and go to the next website that they find in the Yellow Pages, right? Or in Google. So thing number 1, get found. Thing number 2, connect with the right people on the right level. If you're working with affluent customers, there is a certain type of look and feel that will make them feel comfortable and that will make them say, okay, this person understands, that I want convenience, that I want on-time service, I want, certain things that may be a different priority than other types of customers. So you really want to have a really good understanding of who your customer is, and that's where the customer avatar comes in. Okay, so that's thing number 2, is to connect with the right people on the right level. And then thing number 3 is you want to make people do something, right? Once they come to your website, a lot of people are not yet comfortable enough to pick up the phone and talk to you. They're afraid that once they get hold of a salesperson, that they're going to be bugged forever and, that kind of thing. So that's not the sort of feeling that you want people to have when they come to your website. You want it to be low-key, low risk, and you want to give them something, okay? So you could give them a tip sheet. You could give them an area guide, if you're an FBO or something like that. You could do a nice area guide that has, here are the restaurants and hotels and car rentals and other things in our area. That would be really useful for people. You could provide them with a checklist. Here are the things that you need to be thinking about if you're in the market for our product or service. You could offer them a video, maybe a tour of your facility, something like that. Something that gives them an incentive to give you their contact information and type that in, even just an email address and a first name. That might be all you need in order to take the next step in your sales process. But you want that to be a really low-risk, low-key way of them introducing themselves to you, you introducing yourself to them, you giving them something that's of value, and then you start the relationship off on the right foot, right? Okay. So I know this sounds like a long way to answer a very simple question, and that is, what do you think of the free or cheap website builders like Weebly, Wix, 123 My Website, the website builders, and so on? And the answer is that it's not about the tool, it's about what the website does. And I have seen almost none that do all of those things effectively that have been built with one of those free or cheap website builders. Usually the place where they fall down is getting found, getting listed in those correct categories. That's really, really hard to do. Search engine optimization can be really competitive for some companies in some categories. So, there's a lot of people who are looking to get listed, and a lot of times the sites that are built with those cheap or free website builders can only be found if you happen to know the URL. It's better than nothing, but it doesn't do its number 1 job, and that is to get found. Job number 2, does it connect with the right people on the right level? A lot of times when people use these templates and they're kind of using cookie cutters, there's a limit to what you can and can't do, with those kinds of things. And it doesn't give you the flexibility to really think through, if I were a customer, what would I expect to see, and what would really convince me that these people understand my problems and can help me. So that's thing number 2. Thing number 3 is making people do something. A lot of times these free or cheap website builders don't have the utilities that you need to let people download a tip sheet or a video or something like that. So you want to make sure that they have those kinds of things. So it's not about how much you spend. Once again, it's just like, if you spend a lot of money on an airplane, do you want to spend it on the paint job, or do you want to spend it on the engine? It's a question of, does it have all the pieces and parts that it needs to do the job? And, you also want it to look great, but thing number 1 is you want to make sure that it's airworthy. So if you want an airworthy website, you need to make sure that it does all of the jobs that it's supposed to do. So make sure that you ask us a question. We send a book, our social media guide. Let me grab one so you can see it. This is our social media guide for aviation professionals. We send one of these to anyone who asks a question that we use on the air. So ask us a question in the comments, or if you want it to be anonymous, you can always send us an email. And I promise I won't use your name if you ask me not to, or I'll use a pseudonym or whatever you like. We do have a freebie from this week's broadcast, and that is a website refresh checklist. And besides those 3 jobs, it goes into a little bit more detail about the way that those things happen and what you need to do to make sure that that's going to really happen and that you have a good relationship with your website provider. So, you want to know things like, can I add content to my website later? If I make a change on my website, what is that going to involve? Who owns the domain name? Who owns the website contents or the intellectual property of my website? Will it be accessible from mobile devices and things like that? So this is a this is a checklist that you can download. I'm going to include the link in the comments after this broadcast, so you'll be able to go ahead and download that. And you'll want to just go through this and check it off with your website provider, whoever is doing that for you. Just ask them the questions and make sure that you're covered. And if you're looking for a new website, of course, we love the opportunity to do that with you. Or, find you someone who can do a really good job for you for the budget that you have. So next week, we do have a question from someone who is anonymous. They don't want us to use their name, which is just fine. I mailed 1,000 postcards and nothing happened. So we'll go through that process with her and figure out what went wrong and how to prevent that for you in the future. So join us next week for Marketing Monday, 1 o'clock Mountain Time on Monday. And once again, ask us a question and we'll send you a book if we use it on the air. Thanks. Talk to you soon.